And we're live. Woo! Okay. Hi, LinkedIn. I just want to introduce you to one of my favorite people, another INTJ woman, which is very rare. And this is over here, Dr. Tracy Winter. If you want to just introduce yourself, you let them
Hi,
know.
as Brittany said, I'm Tracy Winter. I am a professional certified coach, and I like to work with people who have neurodivergences, who have brains that work differently than the norm. So people who are autistic, people who are ADHDers, people who have dyslexia, dyspraxia, people who are gifted, all of those kinds of interesting brains. That's my wheelhouse, and especially combos of those, because they don't often come singularly. So that's the quick version.
And she's amazing at what she does. I even, I know I'm a quirky person myself. And she helps me understand myself better. But a lot of people actually don't know what neurodivergent even means, and I wanted today to kind of like dig into that so that we can. I have a lot of engineers, especially like in my following, and they might not even know what it is, and this could benefit them and lots of people. So I just wanted to get your definition of that so people could better understand.
Yeah. So there's a couple of different terms that get thrown around when we're talking about this stuff. One is neurodiversity and one is neurodivergent. So I want to make a distinction between those two. So neurodiversity is the concept that humans have different brains, basically. That it's exactly what it sounds like. Within that, there are brains that are more like each other, that are closer to sort of the norm, and then brains that are a little bit less like the norm. And when we're getting out, if you think of it as a bell curve and you're getting out into those skinny ends either side, that's where you find the neurodivergent folks. So neurodiversity describes a group. You can have neurodiversity on your team, but you can't have a neurodiverse person is not a thing. It's instead a neurodivergent person. So that's how we distinguish between those two.
And we want, before we had gone here, we were rapping about how we wanted to tie this into work culture. And when it comes to a DEI standpoint, we want a neurodiverse work culture, right? That goes hand in hand with DEI. It's just more of a newer thing we're talking about recently, right?
Absolutely. It's definitely a DEIJ issue. And more companies are kind of starting to think about it and figure out how to best use their people that are in that spot.
Yeah. And for those of you following, I know I've talked to you about this before, but I've had coworkers with children who were on the spectrum in some way or form. I think autistic was one, and a lot goes into raising a child like that, obviously. But one day they're going to be in the workforce, and there are some people who are high functioning, and most people might not understand that someone is I don't even know how to explain it, a certain type of neurodivergent, or how would we say that? Yeah, well, where they are in the bell curve. And just because someone may not look at you a lot when they're talking to you doesn't mean that they're being disrespectful. That just might mean it's possible they could be autistic, and that's something that's hard for them. And when we understand the different types of brains in the neurodivergent bell curve, if you will, we can maybe better work with people, have more empathy. I don't know how to explain that, but it's I just want people to understand that there's so many different levels of brain waves, and we have to be empathetic towards them all.
One of the big challenges that people who are neurodivergent, it's still hard to say even though I say it all the time, have is that the world is not made for them. The world is made for neurotypical people whose brains are more like each other. And so the challenges and the problems come in when the neurodivergent folks try to live in the neurotypical world and sort of rub up against things that either they don't understand, they don't do well, social expectations, that kind of thing. They just don't fit, So you hear that a lot in job interviews nowadays, right? Oh, they're just not quite a fit for our company. And that's sort of sometimes taken to mean they're not enough like us to be part of this, to be part of our company. So there's a challenge there, because you the more diverse your team, the more effective your team, as long as they respect each other's differences. So neurodivergence, neurodiversity is one version of that you want to have in your teams. But like the specific thing you were talking about, for instance, Brittany, like that comes into effect in different places in the work culture, right? Because it goes from interviewing. What do people look for in an interview? They look for someone who's making eye contact. They look for someone who's confident. They look for someone who says just enough, but not too much. Doesn't go off on tangents, all of these things. And everything I've described is difficult for someone who is autistic or someone who's an ADHDer. They're used to being misunderstood, so they provide way more context than maybe people need, but it's hard to tell. They don't tell stories in straight lines, especially ADHDers. So, people will say, oh, you're all over the place. No, I'm just directly in the place that I am. And often when you're talking to somebody else who's an ADHDer, they follow you just fine. The number of clients that I have that have said, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm totally trapped. You're fine. And they're like, really? Like, yeah, it's okay. Like, my brain can jump too. So with them. But when you're doing interviews, when you are managing all that kind of stuff, you're looking for sort of those ways that people like attend to the social contract, right? Of like looking you in the eye, shaking your hand, knowing when to talk and when not to talk, reading the room. And those are all things that, neurodivergent brains, some of us are not set up to do well. It's in the brain structure. So it's not like we're not trying hard enough, or we're not, because trust me, we're trying hard. We don't want to have that friction. So you have to be aware that like, this is this person, and they come with amazing strengths that your other folks don't necessarily have.
Right. Can you expound on those usually in a stereotype kind of way?
Yeah. So before I say that, I have to say first, these are also different. So as you get out of the norm, you also have different, like bigger differences between the different brains that you see or people. And so you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. If you've met one ADHDer, you've met one ADHDer. So everything I'm now going to say to generalize has that caveat in the front of it.
Right.
But you get the reason we call it neurodivergent is you get a different kind of thinking. So like ADHDers make connections in totally different ways. Like when they do brain scans, the brain lights up in different places than when a neurotypical person is ideating. They're jumping and making connections between things that aren't obvious. And a lot of times they make them before they even know what they're talking about. So you're going to ask them to explain, and you're going to get a fumbly mess because they're still like working it out. But they have these ideas that you wouldn't have thought of. Gifted folks, same thing. They are seeing farther ahead and making many more connections than the average bear. And that's where some of our greatest ideas are coming from. For autistic folks, one thing that a lot of them go into is things like coding, things like CIA and NSA have been employing autistic folks for years because they can look at patterns and see patterns and like break codes or create them. That's a really simple version of things, but they also can be problem-solving machines. I have a client who calls himself a problem-solving ATM because people just come to him and like push the button. He gives you a solution. It always works, and off you go.
Right.
But he's also known for bulldozing people.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what, like, all the stuff that you're bringing up, like, I got, like, chills because I'm, like, that person. But, like, this is why I harp so much on you don't want a culture fit, you want a culture add. And this,
love that.
Right? Because, like, you don't want this, like, everyone needs to have the same brain. Everyone needs to look the same, be the same. That's the whole, like, completely opposite of the DEI thing that we're all trying to achieve.
Yes.
And you've obviously just given great examples as to why, like, someone who might think differently, that doesn't mean they're bad just because they don't think just like you do. I know that, and I'm not diagnosed with, anything. I haven't even tried, so it makes me want to know. But, like, my brain thoughts all over the place, and but we, like you said, we get to, there's somewhere we're going there and we're going to get something great out of it, but it, like, people trying to follow us, that might, be hard for others.
Yes.
But again, culture add over culture fit, y'all. And I think it's great that we're talking about this, because HR people, recruiters, like you're saying, they're maybe trying to hire these people. They need to maybe drop these unbeknownst biases they have when trying to hire people, because they, you might be interviewing someone who, is a bit autistic, and, you might be throwing away a great candidate just because, they're not doing the exact thing that society is saying one should do.
Mm-hmm. Things like making eye contact, things like, some of the things that you're looking for in an interview are not actually things that matter when you're doing the job. So look for the things you need to do the job, not for all of the social niceties necessarily, because there may be explanations you're not thinking of. It's not just that they're not confident. It's not necessarily that, they don't like people, or, all these different assumptions that come out. It could be that this is the way their brain works. And so you take these things and accommodate for them, and you get the payoff of these really interesting, different ideas.
Right. So I really hope that, and I'm definitely going to have this video out for people, so me and you can use this as content and just like get the word out there. Like, it's an awareness that just needs to be had. I'm really happy to see that, hashtag neurodivergent, neurodivergency, like, just, it's finally getting more clout, as it should. But, I appreciate what you do, very much. And, like, let's plug away at your business here, because I would really, I want people to know that, might need, coaching from the best nerd coach around.
You're cute. Thank you, Ms. Brittany. I agree. Like, there are more people that are becoming aware of this, especially in the last year or two. It's really starting to come up. But I think that there's a lot more people who, I still get asked, what does neurodiversity mean on a regular basis, which is totally fine. I'm happy to have that conversation. And also, like, if I type neurodivergent into my, into a LinkedIn message to you, I get the red squiggly line under it. It doesn't recognize it as a word. That's where we are. So we've got a ways to go. So the way that I kind of try to help that is I'm a coach, and I coach in several different ways. One way is, sort of people coming to me privately to say, I can't get systems to work, or I'm having these communication problems, like, lifelong. I don't understand why people don't get me, all the things we've been talking about. And so helping coach them through and find their unique solutions and unique plans that fit their unique brains. Because, every ADHDer has gotten the advice, well, just buy a planner and use it and stick to it. And it's like, if I could do that, I wouldn't be asking, right? Like, I would love to be able to do that. I got 17 planners in my closet that I've been trying to do that with. So
we know,
right? I got another one. I got a new one here next to me that I got like 2 weeks ago. Was written on one day so far. I'm determined it's going to be put into use. But so unique brains need unique solutions, and they're the only ones who know what they need. And I ask questions to help get them there. I also work with neurodivergent folks at work specifically. And I like to work with the neurodivergent person and their manager, and ideally with the team, because chances are you've got more neurodivergent people on the team. They may not even know they're neurodivergent, right? Or they know and they haven't disclosed, because that's a whole can of worms to open up. But how can we accommodate and get the best out of everybody, right? Because, and I feel really strongly about this, because I think that the biggest solutions that we're going to have to world problems, like curing cancer and figuring out, how to prevent world hunger and all of these kinds of things, they're going to come from our neurodivergent folks. They're going to come from gifted people and ADHDers and autistic people that are putting together things in ways that we haven't already thought of. And we need to do what needs to be done so that they are not held back by issues of fit or worrying about are people thinking that I'm mad? Are people thinking that I talk too much? All the things that are taking energy from their brains that we actually need as a society to be solving our big problems.
Right. If they were just able to focus on what they want to, what they need to, and we can help in that sense. And that segues to, do you help managers who know that they might have an employee who is neurodivergent and they come to you for help?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hit her up.
Yeah, and it's this is a challenging thing because it's they call it a hidden disability. I have problems with calling any of these things a disability. They're differences. But it is hidden diversity, right? And like I said, disclosing, has a whole can of worms associated with it. So you may not know your folks are neurodivergent, but you may be able to tell that they need something different than other people need. So I also get asked a lot, like, well, all of this sounds like it's good for everybody, not just neurodivergent folks. And I'm like, absolutely. It totally is. Please accommodate everybody. Like, what do you need to do your best work? Okay, let's make that happen. Right?
Inclusion.
Right. Exactly. Like, include all the people. So yeah, so I enjoy working with managers to help them see and how they can support their the one who just isn't quite part of the team, or the one who people complain about even though they have like great solutions, or that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
How can we integrate that? How can we help them be their best selves and do their best work?
I wish, being whatever I am, that in my previous, you're right, being me, that I would have had someone like you that could have been able to, help, an ex-boss of mine navigate me, because a lot of people just don't understand. Like, I'm an introvert. I don't need the people. Just let me do my job and leave me the hell alone. And, had a boss understood what, neurodivergent was, neurodivergency, whatever, that like maybe they would have been able to help me help them, or help them help me. I don't know. But there's some people that are just like so extrovert, or so, at the bell curve, they will never understand the rest of us who don't have to function like they function. And it would be nice for them to get coaches. So everyone hire her.
Everybody get a coach. Everybody could use some coaching. I firmly believe this, actually. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, and things like the open floor plan office, like for introverts, but it can be like debilitating for somebody who's autistic, or for somebody who's ADHD, or that many distractions around them. Like, they're not going to be able to focus readily.
Right.
A lot of noise canceling headphones happen in that kind of space.
And then they get yelled at for having headphones on. So it's just, there's no win.
Like, you can't make your environment what you need it to be to do your best work. And work from home has been huge for neurodivergent folks, because we can control our environment. I'm in a chair that's comfy and I sit with my legs crossed and nobody cares. Right. And I have the temperature at about the right place that I like it. I have the kind of light on that doesn't suck my energy. I have this small theory that fluorescent lights, the way that they have energy is they take energy from the people, then transfer it into light energy and push it back down on us. That's the only explanation I have for those evil things.
I hate them.
Yeah. So like when we're able to control our environment better, we're able to perform better.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree. And like this, again, it's we're adding to the culture, but like this comes back to the whole I don't like fit thing, whether it's culture or just how we do business. Because why does everyone have to fit this exact mold of how things should be done? Do you want to get the work done or not? You do. That's like, when I'm talking to, the C-suite, do you want this done? Yes or no? That's the goal we're trying to achieve. Then why does it have to be your way or the highway? What if they can get to it their way? Like, and kind of all segues.
It's about the innovation too. It's about moving forward, not just like getting the work done now, although that is definitely part of it. But like, do you want to improve? Do you want to, grow, all of those things. Well, then these are some people that you want to have in those innovative spots, and you want to support them. And, putting them in a noisy office space is not supporting them, regardless of your sense of, there's studies that show that collaboration goes better in those kind of places, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of studies that show how things are most of the time, but we have to remember that we are talking about outliers, right? Neurodivergent folks are outliers. So they get either discarded from those studies or rolled in a very, very small minority. And so you don't really get a sense of whether that's true for this population.
Right.
So, you can quote the studies, and I'm an academic. I love a study. I definitely think it's a place to start and something to think about, and think about the exceptions too.
Right. Like people who are companies that claim, we're innovative. That's one of our values, innovation. Is it? Because if you're cookie cuttering everything, that's not innovative. If,
right.
Everyone has to, like you said, work in this open space, like you should be adaptable. That is innovation. Adaptability and innovation, that's like a thing. So, practice what you preach.
Yeah. If you're going to be agile, right? That's the word that is on the tip of everybody's tongue.
Right.
Like, you're going to be able to be agile and turn on a dime and make it a little bit different. That's what we're saying.
And I guess randomly this came to mind from an HR standpoint, if you are, on the spectrum of some kind, you can go to HR and get like there's the American Disabilities Act, and there are, work accommodations that your employer, depending on how big they are, can actually help you with, so know that you have options out there. If maybe your management isn't great, HR, has to cover your ass as well, because frankly, at the end of the day, HR is CYA to, their business. And so it's good for them to accommodate you as well. So use that to your advantage.
I will say in that situation, because you're right, like under the ADA, they are required to make accommodations. And partly because it is a hidden issue, if it's an unfriendly environment to that kind of thing, it's easy to find reasons to not have you there anymore. And I hear those stories way too often. So you do have to be aware of your environment and decide where it's safe to disclose. Yeah. But I've also heard great stories about people disclosing to their managers, and their managers going, yeah, I've got ADHD too. What else, how do we need to accommodate? So it can go either way, but trust your own judgment, because that whole bringing your whole self to work thing, I think most neurodivergent people would say, I'm masking at least some points, because if I bring my whole self to work, nobody wants that.
Can you talk about masking? Because I bet a lot of people don't know what masking is.
Masking is like I just said, not really bringing your whole authentic self. I think you still bring authentic self, but you only show pieces of it. And really what you're doing is pretending to be normal, right? Pretending to be the person who fits. So we try to learn social rules and set up structures in our head for, well, if this, then this, if this, then this, right? And so the more we've got that, that all becomes part of our mask. I'm a little socially awkward, a little bit. I am shy usually. Take me to a dinner party where I have to talk small talk all night, and you have to give me the whole next day to recover. But the way that I get through those things is that my mom is amazing at those things. She's the hostess with the mostest. She makes everybody feel comfortable and welcome and all of that. So my mask when I'm being social is, what would Mary Angela do?
Oh,
that helps me through. But it's not my natural way of being, right? It is the way that I make social connections, though, because I don't do it well myself. So I'm using this mask, and then I'm exhausted from putting the energy into keeping the mask up. And that's some of what we have to take down. That's energy that could be used for innovation, for ideas, for all of that. So that's a short version of masking. It's anything that sort of you have to do that is against your natural way of being, but it's stuff that we do so that we don't get pointed at, basically, pointed and laughed at if we were elementary school kids, and sometimes when we're grown-ups too.
Right. I mean, me and you being introverts ourselves, like you said, the mask, that's why, a lot of extroverts can't understand, like, how we get depleted, because masking is exhausting.
It's exhausting. Ask any autistic person, ask any ADHDer. And it's almost second nature to mask, because we learn this so small that being ourselves is not acceptable. And so you build that mask early, and sometimes you don't realize that, like, how to take it off. And that's some work that I do with my clients too sometimes, is like, what's under the mask? What are the things that you're choosing to do mindfully? What things are you doing more compulsively that are doing you harm? How are you recovering? How are you taking care of yourself? Because unfortunately, it's something that we still have to do if we want to make it in the world, and do the least amount possible and show ourselves more, partly to be heard and seen for who we are. But yeah, masking is exhausting.
I would agree. And on the flip side of that, the whole other side of the scale, what does maybe an extroverted version of someone look like that is?
There's lots of ADHDers, especially, who are extroverted. So they can get distracted by people very easily. Both ADHDers and folks that are autistic have very deep empathy, and it's not something that people know often about people who are autistic. But part of the reason they become non-communicative, or part of the reason that they look like they can't deal with emotion, is because actually they're overwhelmed by their empathy. And you get that with ADHDers too. So the extroverts are really taking in that energy and running with it. So it's not necessarily an introversion thing, because that's half the population, and half the population isn't neurodivergent, even though the masking kind of applies to both. But it's that, what does an extroverted ADHDer look like? They look like what you think of when you think of ADHD. You don't think of an ADHD inattentive type woman sitting there trying desperately to stay on task. You think of the people who are running around, who are constantly moving, who are speaking very quickly, who are talking to everybody, even if they don't want to be talked to. Like, that's that classic version with either combined type or hyperactive type.
Yeah, I just I was asking that more so for myself, because I didn't know what that looked like.
Yeah.
For like an extrovert that might be autistic or something, like that's probably even harder.
Well, it's a clash, right? I mean, there's the Venn diagram of ADHD and autism and dyslexia and the rest of things. They're very overlapping. So like several of my clients are ADHD and autistic. And it's a tension that they have to hold, right? Because the autistic part wants things structured, wants things predictable, wants things like just to follow the rules that they are trying to absorb. And meanwhile, the ADHD part is like, need novelty, we need to do something new, brand new ideas. Yes, execute at least the first 2 steps, even if we never finish it. So the two of them, they sound like they would be opposing, and they are kind of creating a tension in those folks that have that overlapping Venn diagram.
So good stuff. I find it so interesting. I genuinely.
I'm so glad. I do too.
Right. I mean, part of it's selfish. The other part of it is I want awareness for everyone else too. Like, so and I'm spinning a narrative here for sure, but like meetings, like I think less meetings the better. But from people who might be obviously we're trying to be neurodivergent, and meetings from all different levels I think are long meetings are not good for everyone for the most part, and too many meetings also are not good for someone who might be neurodivergent, whatever. So what do you think about that?
So how about all that?
It's all over the place.
Yeah, well, these folks are going to perform differently in meetings than the average bear. First of all, and this is true for introverts, but it's true for especially folks who are autistic, if you want their best work out of them, give them an agenda ahead of time, tell them what they're gonna talk about, be prepared. Folks who autistic folks aren't really great with change all that often. I actually was just facilitating a conversation that I facilitated monthly for a while, and I'm not going to be anymore. And one of the fellows in there has some autistic tendencies, and he was like, "Wait a second!" He was totally thrown. Like, I don't like change. I like you doing it. Which is a lovely thing to say. And also, so if you pull that in, you come into a meeting and you suddenly change direction, you may be throwing your autistic folks off, and they, get overwhelmed and get overstimulated and can't necessarily make their brains work the way you want them to work. For ADHDers, they have a hard time not blurting out, not jumping in, and not letting people finish their thought. So things like having a spoon that you pass around, or some tool that is like whoever has the spoon gets to work. But also, when they have the idea, they need to say the idea, or they may not have it by the time it's their turn to talk. Like, it may have gone, squirrel may have taken it. Exactly. So helping them learn to like write down a few notes so you remember what it was. I'm doing this all the time when I'm facilitating or coaching, is writing down just a word that makes me remember, oh, that was a thread to pull, or there's a question I wanted to ask, because I won't remember it for the next 2 minutes, especially if I'm also concentrating on what's being said. So like, you're going to see behaviors that look like they are just inconsiderate and offensive and all of that. But really, it's the way this brain goes. Those are difficult things, more difficult than the average person to be able to keep under control. It's not what their brains do naturally.
Right. So, and that's where all three of these things to me come into play. We're talking about neurodiversity, and for the awareness, like, there's so many different levels to this shit, as I always say. And then type, MBTI or whatever personality thing you want to. We obviously are MBTI people.
We are.
And so plug in that, but and then plug to our boy Joe Rigo.
Thank you. It's just what I was thinking.
He made a video just last week that I loved, about INTJs and how we think, and I'm like, oh man, that's so right. And one of the examples, just to segue from what you were saying, is like, us having agendas ahead of time is good, because we can, think about things ahead of time. Because, as some of y'all have seen, like Elon Musk, he can take 20 seconds to answer a question, because we as INTJs, we're all up in here. Mm-hmm. And it's better to give us more time. And then also from an emotional intelligence standpoint, which I always preach about, we have to understand that there are so many different types of people, how we think, our love language, or how we learn, what we're receptive to or not. Like, managers and people have to understand that there is levels to this ish, as I always say, and you can't just assume that everyone thinks how you think. You are ignorant if you do that, and you're not an effective leader if that's how you think.
And here's the thing that's interesting, is that we actually all know that intellectually. I believe we all know that we don't think like, we know humans are unique. We know there are humans that are more different from us than others. And yet, and I do it too, even knowing all, having this being the center of what I do, you kind of get confused when someone doesn't respond the way you expect them to, right? I mean, like, we're taught the golden rule early in life: treat people the way that you would like to be treated. And that's not necessarily going to work, because how I want to be treated is different than how you want to be treated. So I like the platinum rule, which is treat others the way they would like to be treated. To do that, you have to ask questions, and you have to understand them, and you have to be curious and just, come to see things before their eyes, so that you can do that, and so that you can like take advantage of all of our differences and put them to use for all of us. Right. So it's an easy thing to know intellectually, and then you have to practice it is a whole other thing.
It's true. Whole other level to that as well. But that's such a good point. Like, yeah, like, it's a platinum rule. Girl, if you don't, I'm coining that and tagging you. That is fantastic.
I'm sure I stole it from somewhere, but I can't remember where. It's been a while.
It's still great, you know. Shout out to whoever said that first, but still,
Exactly.
I'm plugging you. But yeah, you know, the emotional intelligence thing I talk about all the time. Yeah, it's just love languages and stuff. Business love languages are a thing too, you know, how people, and that can be anywhere on that bell curve too, you know. You like, for example, an autistic person did something great and you want to reward them. Pulling them up on stage and being in front of everyone, you are not helping them.
No.
Right?
No. Most of the time. On the other hand, like, so that's true for a lot of autistic folks. And how about you ask them how they'd like to be acknowledged? Right? That's what you need to platinum rule it, is ask.
Yeah.
You know? So, and before you need to use it. So when you do something that I want to give you positive recognition for, what form is that for you that makes you feel the best? When I need to approach you with feedback that's constructive, how do you want that to be given in a way that you're most receptive to?
Yes.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
ask the questions. That's all you need to do. And that's for everybody. That's not just for neurodivergent folks. Like, why is that not for everybody? Just
Thank you.
be curious about your people and get to know who they actually are.
And it's so true that that's not just for, that's everybody. And that's why I preach it to my clients or just people who I'm trying to get in, as clients, like, y'all need 360-degree feedback with your employees. It should not be a one-way freaking street. This is how I'm going to do things and this is what I expect of you. You're a trash person. Stop it. Like, that's not how this works. Like,
I love you. You're hilarious.
Like, that is such a terrible way to manage people. Like, it's not a one-way street. Ask them, like, that's a beautiful thing. And I'm going to, you know, add that to my notes. Like, you know, I'm the manager, I'm talking to the employee. How can I give you positive feedback? How can I give you negative feedback most effectively? Well, what's that gonna look like for you? These are great freaking questions, because too many people don't ask those questions, and then they wonder why. They just try to shove how they think, you know, like, well, I love being pulled up on stage and getting, you know, well, whatever. Yeah. I would rather crap in my hands and clap. That's you know, that's
an excellent visual, my friend.
You know,
yeah, and that's golden rule. Like, they're abiding by the golden rule. Treat others the way I would want to be treated. Mm-hmm. And like, that's an okay place to start. That's a good place to start. It's better than just being a jerk. And we can do better.
Absolutely. Like, we just have to think past our noses here. And, you know, we got some comments here. I do want to bring those up here. Hi, Adam. Same here, be told that a lot. Oh, that was towards the beginning. We were just talking about what, you know, ADHD and everything that was. Hi, David. I don't know if you're still on, but he also understands the planner issue. Me and Tracy were just talking about all the different planners and whiteboards and everything we have all around our office. It's a thing, but we do our best. Who cares what society says? Only you can create your own path. That plus we can do better is in management leadership positions to help people with said path. And there doesn't have to just be one path. There's a moral of the story here.
I would say about that, Carlos, like, I would really love if that were true. If you could just blaze your own path, regardless of what society says. The reality that we face all the time is that you can't. Like, you don't get where you want to go necessarily by just being yourself all the time.
Unfortunately.
So there's some mitigation that you do in order to get there. The more other people are cognizant of this, and the more other people are asking those questions, the closer we get to who cares what society says, because society says, treat everybody as an individual.
Yeah.
So just want to throw that in there.
It's a super great point. Margot, she's an awesome liver. Trying to take notes from her. She's fantastic. Totally resonates with me. I have to take notes all the time. Oh, and she is a ENTP.
NPs are often have ADHD type symptoms.
See, that's why I love
overlap there.
Knowing this stuff from you and Joe with the types. It's always so interesting to me. Hyperactive. See, I don't know what I am, but of this. Yes, I'm all over that platinum roll. Fantastic. Best note out of all the other great notes here today.
All right. My dad's watching. His was coming next.
Oh, wait.
Isn't he the
Hello,
cutest?
Mr. Winter. Sometimes you would have been asking how others want to be treated. Yes, it does. And we just have to keep preaching this awareness so that I know, you know me, I'm the work culture lady, and I'm the reason I'm, made this business because I want people to be able to come into work and not hate their lives. Because one, from a mental health standpoint, and two, from a business standpoint, you get more money when your people are productive.
Mm-hmm.
So let's make a work culture that is DEI. I mean, long story short, diverse and inclusive, and not just this one way thinking, and that we all need to think like this, look like this, be like this, whatever. It's trash. Stop it. Yeah. I mean, if you can do that, you're just going to be the next Blockbuster, and ain't no one here for it.
Yeah, it's still Dad.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's an intern. Oh, nice. But yeah, so thank you, Tracy. I figure we'll give ourselves a little break for our next meeting.
Sounds good.
So happy that you came on today, and appreciate you. But how can people find you?
Well, first, just thank you for inviting me, Brittany. This has been a fun conversation, and I appreciate you using your platform to get this issue out there and heard more. So it's just wonderful to have an advocate in you. How can people get in touch with me? My website is www.nerdcoach, nerdcoa.ch. My email is tracy@nerdcoach, nerdcoa.ch. Oh, Tracy spelled Tracy, which you can probably see on your screen. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Tracy-Winter is my version. And I'm happy to talk to anybody about anything. On my website, there is a contact area, and it has my Calendly on it. Feel free to just jump on and we'll have a conversation. So that's the best ways to get in touch with me. And I'm around, and I'll talk about this stuff till the cows come home, even though I don't have any cows. So it's going to be even longer than that sounds like. But yeah, I'm always thrilled to talk more about this. Or if there's somebody who thinks, yeah, I need some help with my systems, I need some help, with my team. There's this one person, I don't know what to do about it. Give me a ring. That's what I'm here for.
Wait, that way.
Yes, that's correct.
This way. So yeah, and she is tagged on this event. I'll go into the comments. We need to add your other websites way to get a hold of you. But everyone, please hit her up. She'd be great for your business and or personal benefit. And we will all talk soon.
Bye, Miss Brittany. Thank you. Thanks, y'all.